Welcome back to another deep dive. Sometimes history can feel like a dry textbook,
Right.
but I guarantee you this is anything but.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking Game of Thrones level drama here,
Hmm.
but with real-life queens.
Yeah.
And to guide us through all this, we're using the podcast, The Rest is History, as our source.
Okay.
So think 6th century,
Right.
the Frankish kingdoms,
Hmm.
power, ambition, rivalry, and these two queens, Fredegund and Brunhild.
What's fascinating about this is that we're not talking about queens in the traditional sense,
Right.
These women, Fredegund and Brunhild, wielded immense power even though they weren't officially ruling monarchs.
I mean, just imagine a
Yeah.
world in chaos.
Yeah.
The Roman Empire has fallen, plagues and natural disasters are rampant,
It's a crazy time.
and these women rise to the top,
Yeah.
manipulating kings, waging wars, defying expectations.
Absolute.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It really is a testament to their strength and their ambition.
Definitely.
I mean, think about it. They're navigating a world completely dominated by men,
Right.
and yet they managed to shape the destiny of kingdoms.
Crazy.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is. And what's even more remarkable is that they came from such different backgrounds.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Fredegund, believe it or not, started her life as a slave.
Slave?
A slave.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how does a slave rise to become one of the most powerful figures in the Frankish world? I'm hooked already.
Well, that's where her intelligence, her charm, and her ambition come into play.
Yeah.
She managed to climb the ranks in the household of King Chilperic, eventually becoming his queen.
Okay.
But remember, this is a time of immense upheaval.
Right.
The Frankish kings are constantly vying for power, and alliances are shifting like the desert sands.
So it's not just a story of personal ambition.
Right.
It's a story about survival.
Exactly. To succeed in this world, you needed to be shrewd, ruthless, and always one step ahead of your enemies.
Okay, so that brings us to Brunhild.
Yeah.
Right. She's the complete opposite of Fredegund in terms of her background. A Visigothic princess known for her beauty and her elegance.
Yeah, it's almost like a classic fairy tale setup.
Right.
The humble servant girl versus the refined princess.
Except this fairy tale is far from charming.
Not at all. This is a very, very different kind of fairy tale.
Yeah.
Brunhild marries Chilperic's brother, King Sigbert,
Okay.
which makes her a major player in the Frankish world.
Right.
But her life takes a dark turn when her sister, Galswintha, who was married to King Chilperic, is murdered.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
Fredegund is behind it.
All signs point to her, yes.
Okay, so.
The murder of Galswintha ignites a feud between these two women that will last for decades
Oh, wow.
and have devastating consequences for the entire Frankish world.
So this isn't just a personal vendetta.
No.
It's a war for control for power.
Absolutely. And what makes it even more complex is the way these women use their positions as wives and mothers to further their ambitions.
Right.
They're not just fighting for themselves, they're fighting for their children's inheritance.
Their dynasty.
For their dynasties.
It's like a high-stakes chess game with the fate of kingdoms hanging in the balance.
It really is.
Okay, so tell me, how does this feud play out?
Right.
What are the first moves in this deadly game?
Well, Brunhild understandably wants justice for her sister's murder.
Yeah.
She urges her husband Sigebert to go to war against Chilperic.
Oh, wow.
And so begins a bloody conflict between these two brothers, fueled by the ambitions and machinations of their wives.
So you have these two powerful women
Right.
pulling the strings behind the scenes,
Yeah.
orchestrating wars,
Yeah.
and manipulating events.
Absolutely.
It's like something out of a Shakespearean tragedy, isn't it?
It certainly has all the elements of a great drama.
Yeah.
Love, betrayal, revenge, and ultimately tragedy.
And Fredegund.
Oh, yeah.
I bet she's not just sitting back and watching all of this unfold.
Oh, Fredegund is far from passive in all of this.
Okay.
She is a master strategist,
Hmm.
and she proves it with a move that sends shockwaves through the Frankish world.
Oh,
She orchestrates the assassination of King Sigbert.
no way.
Oh, yeah. Imagine this two young boys approach Sigebert with a message.
Okay.
They kneel seemingly harmless, and then suddenly they stab him with poisoned knives.
Whoa. Talk about ruthless.
I know.
That's cold-blooded.
It's a power move.
Yeah, it's hard to believe something like that could happen.
Yeah.
What happens to Brunhild after her husband is murdered?
Well, she's left in an incredibly vulnerable position.
Yeah.
Sigebert is dead, and she's imprisoned in a convent.
Oh, wow.
It seems like Fredegund has won, but Brunhild, ever resourceful, escapes by marrying Chilperic's rebellious son, Marivech.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah, She escapes imprisonment and puts herself right back in the heart of the conflict.
But marrying her former brother-in-law's son?
It was a very controversial alliance.
Yeah, that must have caused quite a stir.
It was considered incestuous by the church, but for Brunhild it was a calculated risk, a way to regain power and influence.
It's amazing how these women were able to use marriage as a political tool.
It was one of the few avenues of power available to women in this era.
Yeah.
And both Fredegund and Brunhild used it masterfully, forging alliances, securing their positions, and advancing their own agendas.
So Brunhild is back in the game, but I imagine this new marriage doesn't last long.
You're right, the alliance is short-lived.
Yeah.
Marevech dies, leaving Brunhild a widow once again.
Oh my gosh.
But crucially, she's back in Austrasia, her son's kingdom,
Okay.
and ready to continue the fight.
This is incredible.
It is.
So both of these women have faced unimaginable hardships.
Yeah.
Murder, imprisonment, widowhood. Yet they keep rising. They keep fighting.
They are survivors.
It makes you wonder, where did they find that strength, that resilience?
It's a testament to their character, their determination to survive and thrive in a world that constantly tried to diminish them.
You know, I think you're right, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning of their story.
Oh, there's so much more to come.
What happens next?
Oh.
Do they ever meet face to face?
Oh.
Who ultimately triumphs?
Well, that's a story for our next deep dive.
Okay.
Stay tuned because the saga of Fredegund and Brunhild is far from over.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now, but you won't want to miss what happens next.
Trust me.
So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of our deep dive into the lives of these incredible queens.
That's going to be good.
Until then, thanks for listening. Okay, so last time we left off with Brunhild back in Austrasia, widowed for the second time, but far from defeated.
Yeah.
She's got her son's kingdom to protect and a score to settle with Fredegund.
Right.
What happens next in this epic rivalry?
Well, Brunhild proves to be a pretty shrewd ruler.
Okay.
She consolidates her power in Austrasia, ensures her son Childebert is recognized as the heir to the kingdom of Burgundy as well.
So she's playing the long game, building up her strength for that inevitable confrontation with Fredegund.
Exactly.
But what's Fredegund up to during all of this? Is she content to just sit back and watch Brunhild rise?
Not at all. Fredegund is never one to sit on the sidelines. While Brunhild is consolidating her power, Fredegund is facing her own set of challenges.
Okay.
And let's just say her responses are well in character.
Oh, boy.
Tragedy strikes when several of her sons with Chilperic die from dysentery.
Oh, that's awful. Losing a child is a devastating blow, no matter the circumstances.
It is.
How does Fredegund react to these losses?
She doesn't just grieve. She lashes out. Imagine the paranoia, the fear in a world where disease runs rampant.
Yeah.
Fredegund sees enemies everywhere, convinced they're using witchcraft to kill her sons.
So it's not just a mother's grief, it's a queen's paranoia.
Right.
What does she do about it?
She launches a series of brutal reprisals. Anyone suspected of being involved in witchcraft, even remotely, is targeted.
Wow.
It's a reign of terror that reinforces her image as this ruthless and unforgiving ruler.
All right.
And it's important to note that this is a time when people genuinely believed in witchcraft.
Right.
It wasn't just superstition, it was a tangible threat in their minds.
So she's using fear to maintain control, solidify her power. It's a pretty effective strategy, especially in such volatile times, but it's also incredibly chilling.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the human cost of this kind of power struggle.
Absolutely. The rivalry between these two women isn't just a Game of Thrones. It's a story about the dark side of ambition, the lengths people will go to for revenge and power.
But it's also a story about women breaking barriers.
Right.
I mean, here you have these two women essentially ruling vast territories, making decisions that affect the lives of thousands. It's pretty remarkable for this time period.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, the intrigue, the violence, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that these women were pioneers in their own right.
Yeah.
They defied societal expectations and proved that they were just as capable, if not more so, than their male counterparts.
It makes you wonder what might have been if they hadn't been locked in this bitter rivalry.
Yeah.
Could they have worked together, perhaps even forged a powerful alliance?
It's an intriguing question. Imagine a Frankish kingdom ruled jointly by these two formidable women.
Right.
They possessed incredible intelligence, strategic thinking, and a deep understanding of politics together. They might have achieved even greater things,
Yeah.
perhaps brought about a period of stability and prosperity, but sadly, their feud consumed them both, preventing them from realizing their full potential as rulers.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be blinded by ambition and the desire for revenge. So as their feud rages on who gains the upper hand, does one of them finally manage to outmaneuver the other?
Well, the feud continues for years, with both women experiencing victories and setbacks.
Okay.
They become these legendary figures, feared and respected throughout the Frankish kingdoms. Their names are whispered in hushed tones,
I can imagine.
both a warning and a source of fascination.
They're almost like mythical figures, these queens battling for supremacy. But all stories must come to an end. What happens to these two remarkable yet flawed women?
Well, as you might expect with a story this dramatic, the ending is far from predictable. But I think we should save that for the final part of our deep dive.
Oh, you're killing me with suspense. Okay, we'll have to wait to find out the ultimate fate of these rival queens. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dives into the lives of Fredegund and Brunhild. These two queens have clawed their way to the top, survived assassination attempts, and ruled with an iron fist.
It's been quite a story.
It really has. But all good things must come to an end, right? What's the final chapter in this saga?
Well, it's not exactly a happy ending. Remember how Fredegund was convinced her sons were being killed by witchcraft?
Yeah.
Ironically, she ends up dying peacefully in her own bed.
Oh, wow.
You'd think that would be the end of the feud, but the rivalry was far too deep for that.
So even in death, Fredegund can't escape this bitter rivalry?
It seems not.
Who carries on the torch? Does Brunhild finally get her revenge?
You could say that Fredegund's son, Clothar II, inherits not only her kingdom, but also her thirst for vengeance.
Oh, boy.
He sees Brunhild as the ultimate enemy, the one responsible for all the suffering his family endured.
So this feud becomes a generational conflict. It's almost like a curse passed down from mother to son. But Brunhild is a survivor, right? She's outsmarted her enemies before. Surely she can find a way out of this.
Well, this is where Brunhild's story takes a tragic turn. Remember, she's in her 70s by this point.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And she's facing a new set of challenges. Internal rebellions erupt in Austrasia, fueled by nobles who resent her strong leadership.
Okay.
The very people she thought she could trust turn against her.
That's heartbreaking. After all, she's been through all the battles she's fought to be betrayed by those closest to her. It seems like her luck has finally run out.
It certainly seems that way. Clothar II, seeing his opportunity, seizes control of the situation. He captures Brunhild, and let's just say his revenge is brutal.
Oh, no. I have a bad feeling about this. What does he do to her?
He basically uses all the accusations that were leveled against Fredegund and turns them back on Brunhild. He accuses her of murdering kings, of orchestrating conspiracies, of being a tyrant, and he uses these accusations to justify a horrific public execution.
It's almost poetic in a way, isn't it? The very tactics Fredegund was accused of using are now being used against her rival. But what exactly does this public execution entail?
It's a gruesome spectacle designed to humiliate and break Brunhild. She's stripped of her possessions, publicly beaten, tortured for 3 days, and then paraded through the army on a camel.
That's just cruel to be subjected to that kind of humiliation after a lifetime of wielding power. It's hard to imagine the pain and degradation she must have felt.
And doesn't end there. Brunhild is then tied to a wild horse, possibly even several horses, and dragged to her death. Her body is torn apart, then gathered and burned. It's a brutal end for a woman who once held the fate of kingdoms in her hands.
Wow, what a story. It's full of twists and turns, betrayals, and ultimately tragedy. It makes you wonder, was it all worth it? All that ambition, all that bloodshed for what?
It's a question historians have been grappling with for centuries. Fredegund and Brunhild were extraordinary women who achieved incredible things in a world that was stacked against them, but their rivalry consumed them both, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake.
It's a cautionary tale about the corrupting nature of power, the seductive allure of revenge. It's also a story about the human capacity for both great love and unimaginable cruelty.
And it's a story that continues to fascinate us centuries later. These women were complex and flawed, capable of both great acts of kindness and unimaginable brutality. Their story reminds us that history is never simple, that the line between good and evil is often blurred.
It makes you wonder what might have been if they had chosen a different path, if they had found a way to work together instead of tearing each other apart. But that's the beauty of history, isn't it? We can learn from the past, even from its darkest chapters.
Absolutely. By studying the lives of these remarkable women, we gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and complexities of power, ambition, and the human condition. And perhaps we can learn to make better choices to forge a path that leads to a more just and compassionate world.
Well said. This deep dive into the lives of Fredegund and Brunhild has been fascinating, thought-provoking, and a little bit heartbreaking. It's a reminder that history is more than just dates and battles. It's a tapestry woven with human stories full of triumphs and tragedies, love and loss, and sometimes those stories can teach us more about ourselves than any textbook ever could. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of history.